the second part, I may dwell in them. It should have said that I'll dwell in it. Why the Torah is using a different language in the second portion? That is the question. Now, I'll go back again to start. It was the first Israelite house of worship, the first home Jews made for God. But the very idea is fraught with paradox, even contradiction. How can you build a house for God? He is bigger than anything we can imagine, let alone build. King Solomon made this point when he inaugurated another house of God, which was the first temple, the first Beit HaMikdash. He says, but will God really dwell on earth? The heavens, even the highest heaven, cannot contain you. How much less this house I have built? This is written in the Kings 1, chapter 7, verse 27. So did Isaiah in the name of God himself, which he says, heaven is my throne and the earth is my footstool. What house can you build for me? What will be my resting place? This is Isaiah 66, verse 1. You continue, not only does it seem impossible to build a home for God, it should be unnecessary. The God of everywhere can be accessed and accessed anywhere. As readily in the deepest pit on the highest mountain, in a city slum, and in a palace lined with the marble and gold. The answer, and it is fundamental, is that God does not live in a building or any building. He lives in builders. He lives not in structures of a stone, but in the human heart. What the Jewish sages and mystics pointed was that in our parasha, God says, as I read earlier, let them build me a sanctuary that I may dwell in them, not I may dwell in it. Okay, why then God command the people to make sanctuary at all? The answer given by most commentators and hinted at the Torah itself is that God gave the command specifically after the sin of golden calf. The people made the calf after Moses had been on the mountain for 40 days to receive the Torah. So long as Moses was in their midst, the people knew that he communicated with God and God with him. And therefore, God was accessible and close. But when he was absent for nearly 6 weeks, they panicked. Who else could bridge the gap between the people and God? That's the question the Israelites asked. How could they hear God's instructions? Through what intermediary could they make contact with the divine presence? That is why God said to Moses, let them build me a sanctuary that I may dwell among them. The key word here is the verb Shekhinah, to dwell. Never before had it been used in connection with God. It eventually became a key word of Judaism itself. From it came the word Mishkan, meaning a sanctuary, and Shekhinah, which means the divine presence. Central to its meaning is the idea of closeness. Shachen in Hebrew means a neighbor, the person who lives next door, a neighbor.
Yeah.
What the Israelites needed what was gave them was a way of feeling as close to God as to our next door neighbor. That is a beautiful idea. Shekhinah, remember Shekhinah, Shachen. That is what the patriarch and matriarch had. God spoke to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, Sarah, Rebecca, Rachel, and Leah intimately, like a friend. He told Abraham and Sarah that they would have a child. He explained to Rebecca why she was suffering such acute pain in pregnancy. He appeared to Jacob as the key moment in his life, letting him not to be afraid. That is not what the Israelites had experienced. Until now, they had seen God bringing plagues on the Egyptians. They had seen him divide the sea. They had seen him send manna from heaven and water from the rock. They had heard his commanding voice at Mount Sinai and found it almost unbearable. They said to Moses, "Speak to us yourself, and we will listen. But do not have God speak to us, or we will die." God had appeared to them as an overwhelming presence, an irresistible force, a light so bright that to look at it makes you blind, a voice so strong it takes you go deaf. So for God to be accessible not just to the pioneers of the faith, the patriarch and matriarch, but to every member of the large nation, was a challenge, as it were, for God himself. He had to do what the Jewish mystics called Tzimtzum. In a later date, I'll talk about the Advent and the Tzimtzum, which is a beautiful, beautiful item in Jewish religion, and Tzimtzum means to contract, to make yourself small. So God himself made himself small, and you can see him in light. You can hear his voice and his glory within a thick cloud, and allow the infinite to take on the dimensions of the finite. Okay. But that, as it were, was easy part. The difficult part had nothing to do with God and everything to do with us. How do we come to sense the presence of God? It isn't difficult to do so standing at the foot of the mountain, even at the foot of the highest mountain, which is Mount Everest, or seeing the Great Canyon. You do not have to be very religious or even religious at all to feel awe in presence of the sublime. But how do you feel the presence of God in the midst of everyday life? That is a real question in Judaism. I repeat the question again. How do you feel the presence of God in the midst of everyday life? Not from the top of a mountain, Mount Sinai, but from a plain beneath. Not when it is surrounded by thunder and lightning as it was in the great revelation, but today, just a day among days. That is the life transforming secret of the name of the parasha, Truma, which means a contribution. Again, I repeat, Truma means a contribution. God said to Moses, tell the Israelites to make for me a contribution. You are to receive the contribution for me from everyone whose heart prompts them to give. That is a portion of the reading that we are doing today, Parashat Terumah. The best way of encountering God is to give. I repeat, the best way of encountering God is to give. The very act of giving follows from or leads to the understanding that what we give is part of what we were given. It is a way of giving thanks, an act of gratitude. That is the difference in the human mind between the presence of God and the absence of God. If God is present, it means that what we have is His. He created the universe. He made us. He gave us life. He breathed into us the air we breathe. All around us is the majesty, the plenitude of God's generosity, the light of the sun, the gold of the stone, the green of the leaves, the song of the birds. This is what we feel reading the great creation psalm which we recite every day in the morning service. The world is God's art gallery, and His masterpieces are everywhere. When life is a given, you acknowledge this by giving back. I repeat this sentence again. When life is given, you acknowledge this by giving back. But if life is not a given, because there is no giver, if the universe came into existence only because of the random fluctuation in the quantum field, if there is nothing in the universe that knows we exist, if there is nothing to the human body, what a string of letters in the genetic code, and to the human mind, what electrical impulses in the brain, if our mortal and moral convictions are self-serving means of self-preservation, and our spiritual aspirations mere delusions, then it is difficult to feel gratitude for the gift of life. There is no gift if there is no giver. There is only a series of meaningless accidents that it is difficult to feel gratitude for an accident. The Torah therefore tells us something simple and practical. Give, and you will come to see life as a gift. I repeat, give, and you will come to see life as a gift. You don't need to be able to prove God exists. All you need is to be thankful that you exist, and the best will follow. This is how God came to be close to the Israelites through the building of the sanctuary. It wasn't the quality of wood and metals and drapes. It wasn't a glitter of jewels on the breastplate of the high priest. It wasn't the beauty of the architecture or the smell of the sacrifices. It was the fact that it was built out of the gift of everyone whose heart prompts them to give. Where people give voluntarily to one another and to the holy causes That is where the divine presence rests. Again, I repeat this very important sentence. Where people give voluntarily to one another and to holy causes, that is where the divine presence rests. Hence, the special word that gives its name to this parasha, Truma, I have translated it as a contribution, but it actually has a subtly different meaning for which there is no simple English equivalent. It means something you lift up. Teruma means lift up by dedicating it to a sacred cause. You lift it up, then it lifts you up. You lift it up, then it lifts you up. The best way of scaling the spiritual heights is simply to give in gratitude for the fact that you have been given. God doesn't live in the house of stone. He lives in the hearts of those who give. God doesn't live in the house of stone. He gives in the heart of those who give. Thank you. And now we should share the ideas and ask questions, and I will be happy to answer them.
Yeah.
Thank you, Dr. Norman. And I'll any questions, just go ahead. You can for Marcelo, anyone?
Well, I do. I read the parsha, and I was impressed by the parsha, but at the same time, I saw the intent of this writing. You elevated this to another level. I think that people heard God's law to try to live together. He gave them directions how to live together, or not to fight together, or to or to kill each other. So Moses was going to go to the mountain to receive in writing the first commandment, and in order to do that, it was necessary to have a place, a place, sanctuary, to put the law which will bind the people together. And then to do that, Dr. Norman said that people have on their kindness give to be able to construct this place, this magnificent place to put the law. So there is very detailed instructions how to create an ark, the dimensions of the ark, where to put the tables of the law. I don't know, and
may I ask you a question, Marcelo? Do we actually think that it's a magnificent structure that we've gotten the full architectural plan in for, but do we think that is for the benefit of God or for the people? It is. Well, I don't think that that God needs a place so much as the place was meant for the people. So, and the magnificence of the structure was meant for the people.
Well, that's what I was going to go. You see, how do we feel the presence of God? We don't see them, we don't hear him, we just feel them. We just feel that presence sometimes together. And since it's not the material way to see, it's something that is on top of what material is and what life is. Life in some sense is not only the material things together, but together with the energy that goes together. It's very hard to quantify a pain or a love. It's in addition to our existence. So people have to gather together to have a place where they feel attracted to God, and in that sense, God was dwelling with them. But the important part here is that the presence was for a community. The community was central to all the idea. God didn't do a law for one person. It did the commandment for a community to live together.
Yeah, to confirm to what Marcelo is explaining, my dear friends, you see, the Mishkan later was changed to the main sanctuary that Solomon built in Jerusalem.
Yes.
First sanctuary, huge building. Okay, later the second sanctuary, which unfortunately were both destroyed. But the Mishkan right now, you know where is the Mishkan right now? Is the chapel, is the Beit Knesset that we gather together.
Well,
This
that's
is the whole sense of having a Mishkan, a gathering, that you gather together. And as I said last week, it doesn't matter who has more money, who has less money, who is more beautiful, who is less beautiful. People are gathering together, join together, and pray together. That is the essence of having a Mishkan, like a neighbor, a neighborhood.
So we live as a community, not as a private individual. Most of our prayers, if you say this for one person, immediately is transformed to a community prayer. We wish help to some person, but at the same time, together with all the people sick on the people of Israel. So community is very central to everything we do, and we feel, and the best way to feel the presence of God is to be in a community. It's very hard to feel the presence of God as one person.
Yeah, again, Marcelo, to confirm that the prayers that we read, we use plural. You see, the Shemone Esrei, the Amidah, we say, Refa'enu Hashem Elokeinu. Refa'enu, God, please heal us. We don't say heal me only. We say heal us. Refa'enu Hashem Elokeinu. All the prayers are used in the plural, not in the singular.
And the laws, the first laws that we received, the 10 commandments that we call them, were designed for a community. It didn't say don't kill yourself. It says don't kill anybody. So community is very essential. And today, the big question is how to build this community. The technology of today is contributing to be kind of isolated. But the isolation doesn't create a community. I think that's the problem we have today. And I think it's important. I think we still need the Mishkan. And I think we have to fortify the Mishkan, because without the Mishkan, we're just a single individual kind of isolated. And the Mishkan is help us, our sanctuary help us to be together. I think, as you say, giving is important part in this construction.
But because when we talk about giving is also ownership. When you, someone was going to say something. No, but
you construct.
Let me finish, Marcelo, please.
Yeah.
But this is what we are doing even today. We're all getting together,
Right?
not as an individual.
Right. And I wanted to finish up on the thought that the idea of giving implies ownership. When you bought into something, when you've given into something, you have a vested interest in that thing. Now the problem for us is how do we expand that from those of us who are regularly um, involved in the community to beyond those of us who are not yet involved, and get them to buy into and to be take part and ownership of the community, because without everyone, the community is going to die. And we can, we see it around us all the time. Without everyone participating or buying in, and giving doesn't own is not only monetary or whatever it is, it's also time,
No,
or
no.
just showing up or being a part of the community. So my question is, how do we elevate our own giving to include or to make it necessary, make us create a space for others to come in and join. And I have a question for Rabbi. The me, that word me, make me, the Mishkan. What does that me signify, Rabbi?
You see, it goes back that God wants to be present everywhere in everybody's heart, and me means God, but God is not a body. God doesn't have hand. God doesn't have face. God is outside any imaginable body. So that me means the spirit, but which spirit? Spirit which is inside of everybody's heart. A lot of people, you see, they ask me, can you prove the existence of God? That's a huge, huge question to be asked. The answer is God is inside you, is in your heart. In
It's
fact,
everywhere.
everywhere, in every
Right.
aspects of the life, and everywhere. That is the answer. That is the
Yeah.
answer.
He's invisible, but he's everywhere.
Exactly. Now, you see, here we have Joe, who is a survivor of Holocaust, and we are proud to have him as a member of our community. A lot of people again ask, and this has been a question after the Holocaust, that where was God when the Holocaust happened? Where was God? Joe, can you give us an answer? Because you have gone through the
Well,
country.
yeah. Well, that's why people ask me that when I talk to the schools, whatever. Ask me, did you
Yeah.
ever think of giving up? I said, no, I never lost faith. I never lost believing in God. I always believed in God. And no matter what happens, God is always with us. And never give up. Never stop believing in God. I have a little booklet, I don't know, probably you saw it, I showed it to you, what one of the schools made here. And at the front of it, it says, Joe, do you believe in luck? So, but on the back of the book, it says, no, I believe in God. See, that's what it is.
Well, the interesting thing is that 100 years ago, community was a little bit easier to define because community included a central place. The synagogue was just not only the place to pray, but it was the place where you did most of your communication with the community. You wanted to find a job, you want your kid to be going to learn in a place and get advice. You lost somebody, you needed some relation. Today,
no. Years ago, the synagogue wasn't just to pray. The synagogue was a gathering where people decide what to do and how to do, and how to live. You know, it wasn't just a place to go to pray. It took in everything, every aspect of life. That's what it was.
And the rabbi was a kind of general director of the
Yes.
community. And
Yes.
so the is how do we do define today community? Because family is also kind of going in transformation in our society, and community is also very loose. Maybe people belonging to Amazon or to Facebook find that they are a community, but there's quite difference between a community.
It's not the same. It's
and
not the same.
No.
that touch each other in a place like a synagogue.
That's right. The synagogue was always the center of everything.
Mhm. So, any opinion from aside from me and Dr. Normal?
I agree with what you've been saying. It makes sense to me. Definitely.
Again, to
Yeah.
inject the presence of God, you see, very many people, unfortunately, in today's world, they are atheists. They don't believe even in God. I have a friend who is a very famous neurologist, surgeon, and many times I've been asking him, I say, my friend doctor, when you are doing a surgery, which is a very difficult, you know, neurosurgery is probably one of the most difficult parts of any type of surgery. I say, look, is it you who has the knife and who is cutting the patient or who is doing the surgery? What goes in your mind? Tell me the truth. Is it you? Is it your knowledge? Has it been your experience? You know what's the answer? He says, believe it or not, Isaac, the last thing and the first thing which comes to my mind when I'm doing the surgery is, God help me. He says, God help me. That is beautiful, you see. So it's not him, that surgeon who is doing the surgery. Is God who is doing the surgery through the hands of that surgeon. Are you with me? It is the God who
Yes.
does everything
Yeah.
through our hands. That is why
That's right.
in Judaism, we believe that every Jew, every person is a partner of God. We are a representative of God in this earthly world, and we have a role to play. I cannot say that, look, that homeless or the sick person who is sleeping on the side of the street, how do I care? I don't care. He's not my family, but you should care. As a Jew, you should care because you are the ambassador of God in this earthly world, and you have a role to play. That is the truma. That is the contribution that, you see, each person had to contribute to build that sanctuary. The sanctuary was a symbol, but that contribution, that giving, we should remember, we should give our time, give our money, give our mind, anything that we can contribute, that makes the world a better world to live.
Yes. I think that's, if we stop or read our prayers slowly, I think you will find that message in most of the prayers we do. And we go very fast. We don't realize what we're praying for sometimes. But be conscious about the people around you is a big part of the prayers. And especially if people are suffering or people are going through certain transitions, it's very important to feel for that person, not to ignore that.
Right, Right.
You know, there's a lot of Holocaust survivors who ask the question also, where was God when the Holocaust happened? Say don't believe, but we used to say God works in mysterious ways. We can't question, because in my particular case, I have been in places where not for God wouldn't guide me, I wouldn't be here today. I was several times. Like for instance, when I was in the Warsaw Ghetto, my parents decided for me to get out. If I didn't get out, I would have gone where my parents, sisters, and brothers went, to Treblinka. So God got me out, so I can keep me today that I can tell people what happened. When Dr. Mengele told me to go to the left, and I see God made me to run back to the other side. If I didn't, I would have gone to the guest chamber.
Beautiful, beautiful.
So it shows you,
in effect, you are
God,
yes. Beautiful.
I myself question a lot of times, why was I the only one for my family? I've lost 5 siblings, my parents, aunts and uncles and cousins. Why did he keep me to survive? So I guess God had a mission for me. And that's what I'm doing now, is doing God's work to talk to people all over, everywhere.
Beautiful, beautiful.
Matter of fact, I'm going tomorrow. I'm going to a Catholic church, which is the first one to a Catholic church to talk tomorrow.
Beautiful.
And so I've been going all over this country.
Carmen,
That's what
I
doing.
want to hear the other participants' opinion. Let them share, let them talk, please.
I'm not stopping. They all they have to do is unmute themselves to talk. I've not muted anyone. They have to unmute themselves.
My question is, how do we bring people back? So many people have been alienated. They don't want to come back to temple. The question is, how do we bring everybody back, especially the young people?
Yeah, well, that's not an easy question. Yeah, the only question is, how do we do it?
I think part of the problem is there's a cynicism among, I mean, and not unearned. The cynicism is, I think, in many cases unearned, because we live in a world today where every flaw, every misdeed by every person is readily available for everyone to see and scrutinize. And when our so-called leaders, those who do not live up to the what they preach, let's call it that, what they say, then that sort of feeds into the cynicism of the younger generation. See, this is what I tell you, they are only out in it for themselves, they're only out for their own gain, they're not they're not living what they say. And that's a huge part of, because whenever I have met so many younger people, that's a part of their complaint there, because why should we go when this is the behavior of so and so, so and so and so and so. And I think the generation of my generation and those who are in leadership needs to, whether it's the pressure is too much or whatever, that's the position they've taken. And may I, okay,
well, you know,
but
actually,
I haven't quite finished. Oh, go ahead, Joe, go ahead.
No, actually, I had a phone call this week from a young couple. You guys know, a couple, Miller, I think, Jonathan and Christina, I think.
Yeah, I remember them. Yeah.
They called me to see how I'm doing.
Nice. How are they?
So they are good. They said, and I told them, I said, why don't you, when we have service at the synagogue, why don't you come? She said, okay, then we're going to try.
Well, I think that there is a part that we didn't discuss about today's parsha. Yes, the Mishkan was built, but first was the contribution, and second, there was an interest to do it. So people with skill made the curtains. People with skill made the poles to get the curtains. People with skill kind of embroidered the curtains to look nice. People with skill did the cover of the art, so it looks beautiful with gold and two seraphims in the middle. So it was the work of the people, but the people wanted to do it. It's very important that is that want, is this drive to do it.
Yeah, but Marcel, I want to interject here a little bit. Mark, may I interject? Because I want to go back to the point I was trying to make earlier, is that if you know, sorry, not if you know, the Parsha gives very, very specific instructions as to how each thing was to be done. And it dovetails on what you're saying a little bit, because it says beaten candlesticks, not poured gold, which might have been easier just, to make a frame and pour it, but you had to put in the sweat equity. You had to put in the ownership equity. You couldn't just embroider any way you wanted. It was very specific instructions on how to do it and what to do, so that idea that you were not just doing it by rote. Oftentimes when we do our services, it often feels like we're just doing it by rote. We're not doing it because it has any meaning to anyone. We're just flying through it as fast as we can. And this is what I'm getting. This is the whole point of what I'm getting to. We're going so fast that nobody can keep up with the reading anyway, and no one can keep up. No one is really getting the emotional investment that we want to have. So it's kind of that thing of slowing it down, say, take your time, watch what you're doing, make sure that it's meaningful to you and to the recipient.
Yes. I couldn't agree with you more.
And so
absolutely agree with you.
And so this is, and if, because once we get into this thing of doing stuff by rote, well, no, younger people are not going to follow you. They're not, they're not reading with you, they're not understanding with you, but you're not giving anything to them. And we keep saying giving, but if you're not giving to them, if they're not being able to receive what you're given, then what is the point? I'm asking the question. What is I don't know if anyone else feels the way I do. What's the point?
Well, I think that when we do our prayers, the main prayer, it says, whatever you do, you have to teach your kids. When you study, when you sit, when you go, when you come back, your kids have to be instructed and should be told about our religion, our feelings, to start to instill them that curiosity, that drive. And we have failed somehow to do that with the younger generation. So they feel needed also. Also, when some more kids get to a bar mitzvah, what do? We are introducing them into a community, so they be active members of that community. It's not only just a party, it's given responsibility. But today, a bar mitzvah is a party. The responsibilities are not very clear. So now,
Well,
we
does
need
the responsibility go
to
two ways,
determine-
Marcelo?
Mhm.
Doesn't responsibility, because I think the point that I'm making is I don't know if maybe it's just my idea, but I think responsibility goes two ways. I think when you're teaching your kids, you have to teach them in a way that they understand and they can fully embrace it. And that's
Yes.
your responsibility to teach them in that way. If
That's
you
right.
don't, sorry?
That's right.
But yeah, and so just say, oh, you just have to do A, B, and C. It's not teaching them. It's giving somebody something that they will hold on to for the rest of their lives. I think last week, Dr. Norman mentioned, or was it maybe about the person who still comes up to his father or something, I don't know where I heard it, and asks for a blessing no matter even at his older age, because that has always been something that he has had that keeps him and sustains him every week. Was it you, Dr. Norman?
Yes, it was the son of the Joe Lieberman,
Right, yes, right.
the
And
senator, right?
right. And so that thing that he's taught him, he didn't just say one and done, or or whatever it is. It was something that was meaningful, and so we don't make or what we're trying to impart meaningful, then no one is going to take it as the values we teach the kids. If your bar mitzvah or your b'nai mitzvah is just a party, if that's the value we teach them, that's the value they're going to have, and that's the thing that they're going to pass on to their kids. Oh, when you reach the age, we'll just do this and get it done, and we've done our obligation to Judaism. Well, and then eventually that even gets eroded even more and more and more. You never see the parents who've just had a bar mitzvah in Shabbat on Saturday morning or even Friday night.
Yeah.
Mm. Yeah.
Okay. So let's finish the services by reading En Kelohenu together. And I again wish everybody a nice and happy Shabbat, and hopefully we see each other in person next week. Let's
Rabbi?
start together En Kelohenu.
Rabbi,
Yes.
May I add one thing?
Yes, go ahead, please.
The question was raised, that Rachel raised, was how do you keep the interest? How do you bring the young people back? And I have the same question, although Carmen was offering an answer, but I can tell you that when I started Hebrew school at Bethel, and it was 1963, and I was 8 years old, and I have the graduation picture of our class. After we finished the 5th year, Rivka Tzur, who was our teacher and principal, was going to be leaving, and there was no one to really replace her for a 6th year. She had wanted to start a Hebrew high school, not just the elementary school that we went to. And really, Hollywood Temple Bethel in those days couldn't have been any nicer for services or for school. And for a sense of community. There were groups, sisterhood and the men's club and so forth. And Rabbi Wagner was always available to anybody who wanted to speak to him privately. It was like a family community. And yet, after the 5th year, there were only maybe 3 of us who continued on at Beth Am for the 6th year. And by the time I graduated from Beth Am, what they had begun doing was busing in kids from the valley and different schools to continue the high school, because not all the other synagogues were able to do it individually. And by the time I graduated from there, 1972, same year I graduated high school, public high school, I was the only one from the original Aleph class at Beth El who graduated. I have that picture also, and it was a big group of us from Beth El, and they were every other student from Beth El had left, and the reason that had circulated was that they didn't feel going to synagogue played a role in their lives generally. They didn't have a reason to continue. And that was the modern thinking at that point in time. And so what was important was to get your education, a secular education in college, and to make as much money as you could.
Right.
That was what it was.
Beautiful. Great memories. Great memories.
So how do we, Judy, how
Yeah.
do we, well, what I'm getting out of that is, how do we get the synagogue to play a role? Joe talked about earlier that the synagogue was the central hub of the community at one point. Now we've gone away from that, where the synagogue is no longer the central hub. So
No.
how do we get synagogue to because we get these we've got these transient social media.
We get what? I'm sorry.
We get these
only
transient these transient social media communities, whether it be Facebook, or if you remember, I forget the old one, whatever it was that Facebook replaced, but they don't really they do not really offer central
No, they don't.
homes. So how
well,
do we get
the only one who does it is the only synagogue which has a school.
Yes.
If you have a school, you have the parents and you have a community. But if we don't have a school, that's what does it. That's why we can't get anybody. That's the problem.
Well, maybe we should offer also secular type of instruction also. Maybe if we can complement our religion with secular type of information, I don't see a contradiction, because science, I don't see science contradicting the existence of God, or contradicting anything that we pray for. So maybe we need to start opening to additional services that we do that people need today. Things I realized, for example, with the 2 kids, they did additional help for regular subjects in school. Maybe we should provide that.
I know you and Jeff have been providing that for them, but maybe and we've talked about,
or maybe we can open a little bit more to other people, to other kids. And if we don't provide the Jewish education, we provide the additional, and they come to the synagogue center, and they will be aware that there is a synagogue and there is people worshiping in the synagogue and so on. So they start getting at least aware that they're Jewish.
Okay. That's a thought.
I think that one of the reasons today that so many people feel, if you read online in the news, there are quite a few articles, that there are a lot of people who feel despair because of what's going on in the world. And that part, perhaps that part of their lives, that element of a religious community is missing. And then when they get disappointed because they see what some of the religious leaders have been doing, then they give up on it. But in life, there's good and bad in everything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, good and
No,
bad.
the only thing I can tell you is I've been talking almost now every Chabad in California and outside of California, because the Chabad is the ones, they have the schools, they keep the people together,
Yes.
and
yes.
they exist. They are in existence and doing very good, because I've been talking to every Chabad almost around Los Angeles and also Northern California. Even I'm going next month, I'm going to Spokane, Washington to talk to a Chabad there. I have already for Lake Tahoe, they want me to come. So this is the ones you see, the Chabad, they keep it together and they get the people, they have the people, and they have the money. They
Well,
get
but
the money.
it's also not only that. If you see their website, people have been working to their website from the community. They have contributed that, and they have a great website. They also have a recovery center for addicts, and they provide that. So they do open the community and to the needs of the community. So it's not only prayers, but they do satisfy the needs of community. And so I think
maybe we need to redefine.
Opening the synagogue to more of that is not a bad idea.
So it's a matter of definition of what is the synagogue and the purpose of the synagogue. It's how we define what is our purpose. That's what it is. And as Dr. Norman says, probably this is not the best forum to do it in, but that's a discussion we ought to have, I think.
No, I spoke about a month ago. I went to St. Louis here. I spoke at the St. Louis College there. It was 1,350 people. And they sell tickets for that. And it was sold out. I was in Bakersfield, the same thing. I go to Glendale, to Torrance. I have Glendale, Hollywood, Burbank, and Torrance. I've been ever at the marina, all the Chabads around here, Moore Park. All the Chabad, and they sell tickets and they sell out. They sell out. So the crowds, they get 400 or 500 people at almost every gathering. That's why tomorrow I'm going to I told you, to a Catholic church, because the pastor was at one of the Chabads I was talking to. And he comes over and asks me, said, would you talk to a Catholic church? I said, yes, which is I'm going tomorrow. I'll be talking to a Catholic church. You see, that's what it is. You got to get the people together, and they advertise. They advertise, and they get the people. That's what you have to do.
Okay. Rabbi?
Okay, may we conclude with reciting Enkel Wahanu together. And again, I wish everybody a good Shabbat. And
Well,
I really appreciate you gathering together, even if it was on Zoom. But please make sure that next Saturday we gather together in person. It's very important Shabbat Zachor. We have two Sefer Torahs coming out of the Ark, and that Shabbat Zachor is a very, very important in the Jewish calendar. So let's recite Enkel Wahanu together.
Sorry, I will interrupt a little bit because I just wanted to tell the community that tomorrow will be the yard site of my wife.
Okay.
So I don't know if we're not in the synagogue, we cannot do the Kaddish, but at least to announce it.
Yes,
And-
yes. You see,
Yeah.
we have all her memories, and I hope that her memories be blessing to you and your family and to all who knew her. And I was
Yeah.
one of those who have high respect for her. And I wish you, Marcelo, best of uh, luck and life and happiness, and on behalf of the community. Thank you to reminding us. Thank you. Appreciate that you reminded us. Let's recite Enkelohenu together. Enkelohenu, Enkadonenu,
Adonai,
Enkemalkenu, Enkemoshenu,
Elohim,
Mikelohenu, Mikadonenu, Mikemalkenu, Mikemoshenu, Nodel Elohenu, Nodel Adonenu, Nodel Malkenu, Nodel Moshenu, Baruch Elohenu, Baruch Adonenu, Baruch Malkenu, Baruch Moshenu, Atahu Elohenu, Atahu Adonenu, Atahu Malkenu, Atahu Moshenu, Atatoshenu, Atatakum Perachem Zion, Kelechanena Amoed, Ose Shalom Bimrumav, Hu Yaseh Shalom Aleinu, Ve'al Kol Yisrael, Ve'imru, Imru, Amen. Yaseh Shalom, Yaseh Shalom, Shalom Aleinu, Ve'al Kol Yisrael, Yaseh Shalom, Yaseh Shalom, Shalom Aleinu, Ve'al Kol Yisrael. Shabbat Shalom.
Amen.
Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
Before we disconnect, sorry, maybe we can conclude the service, but there was a question that Judy wanted to ask with respect to Passover. Should we
With
celebrate
respect to what?
Passover?
Oh,
About-
yes.
Would you like to talk a little bit?
Yes, thank you. Ruby from a Havara that I go to had posed a question because last year her Havara group came for Passover and Carmen was kind enough to make it a very special event. So she is interested in coming again this year. We don't know that it would be as many people, but the rabbi had suggested that Marcelo, Carmen, and I have a discussion today. And Carmen, you had suggested we just do a small conference call between the three of us. Would you like to do that, Carmen? To do or Marcelo? Marcelo is.
Everybody's here now, so I just said that's also a possibility. Everyone is.
I beg your
here now.
pardon? I didn't hear you.
Everyone is here now, so we can just have the discussion whether or not the synagogue wants to do Passover. I want to make it clear, last year's Passover was not a synagogue event.
Right.
Last year's Passover was, actually, that was a Passover that I was having in my home. That when a few other people indicated that they would be interested in having a Passover, since we did not have one, so I said, okay, we'll just do it by invitation only at the synagogue. It was not a synagogue. It's not a synagogue event like we have had or synagogue Passovers in the past. What we're talking about here is a synagogue Passover like we've had Passovers in the past, which means we'd send a mail out rather quickly. The decision would have to be made this week because we'd send an invitation out to our regulars that we're doing Passover again this year and plan a Passover as we ought to. So I do not want to use last year's Passover as a template for anything we're doing. Go back to the original synagogue template of Passovers, not
Well,
last year's.
I think that unfortunately, our budget now is much more restricted. So maybe we should start by doing our own community Passover, and if we can do better, then we can enlarge it. But at least to start like a community Passover for us without the additional things like cantors and so on. So we can try to get the service more or less us going into the dinner.
Marcelo, will you be able to join us, or are you gonna still go
I
out?
believe, I don't know exactly yet, but it's possible yet because my son's family is going to go with Temple Hillel, where my granddaughter is attending for a Passover
Yes.
celebration, and they would suggest that we can go, but the accommodations are not necessarily kind of for my age, so we're still discussing that at this point. I have not made a resolution.
And
That there is a lot of the probabilities. Yes, I will stay here.
I beg your pardon, the last part?
There's more probability that I will stay here than I will go.
Oh, that's good news. And Rachel, will you be attending, or if Marcelo does not, will you not also?
Yes, I don't think I want to go up to Big Bear. It's too cold.
Oh, okay. So, that's good news, because Ruby had commented that if you come, then it's a possibility that more people will come from the Havurah group, whether it's the type of untraditional Passover from last year or traditional, the way it had been done in the past, which is fine. And please tell me, because the only Passover I've done with shul was last year. So in previous years, did Rabbi Weinberg come for the second night to shul?
Well, in the prior year, we spent money. We spent for a cantor, or we spent for a full rabbi service, and we spent for a dinner to make food with additional people helping, cleaning, and so on. So we went over the full expense of an occasion.
Yes, but generally speaking, in past years, does Rabbi Weinberg come on?
Yes.
He does?
Yes, he did it the past years, yes.
Oh, he did. Okay. And Ruby had asked me last year, Janice, she was a cantor, had come.
So don't refer to last year at all, because last year was an unusual.
Yes, I
event.
understand that completely. But still, if she wanted to know, if we had other people who wanted to join, and if she wanted to do some cantorial songs and perhaps a few things read in Ladino.
Okay, we should plan. That would be a matter for the planning group to figure out how they want the Passover to organize.
But are you open to adding?
I don't think this is the place for it. I think right now
that is
the only
why we
discussion-
talked about having a separate phone call.
This is the only discussion that needs to happen is Hollywood Bethel going to have a Passover this year?
So I think the answer is yes, or will we have
And
enough
the planning
people?
group can then plan and come back to the board and say, this is the budget for it. This is how much we intend to charge so that it covers the cost of the Passover. And these are the things that we can do. And that's how it should be done. It shouldn't be done here.
Okay, well, that was my consent. Jeff, are you able to come? I mean, we need to decide if we're going to have a group.
I'm looking
big
forward.
enough.
Yeah, I'll be there.
That would be great.
Could I make
Put in the card in
Oh,
front of
Ruby, I didn't know you were there.
Yeah, I just wanted to make it come. So I think it would be wonderful if some of the Havurah could join in, and not necessarily in the planning or whatever, if you want to do. Could you explain what you normally do as your formal planning, or what is possible?
The normal formal planning for the Passover is once the synagogue gives the okay for a Passover, then we we formulate a planning group that sits down, decide how much is the cost, what is the budget, basically. Because we try to have the Passover pay for itself. That's always our biggest goal, is to make sure that the Passover pays for itself. It includes the food and and everything else that goes along with it. So we need to decide, do we have a Passover? If the answer is yes, then the planning group sits down and it arranges, okay, this is the cost, this is as best you can, of course, a projected cost of food. How many guests do we need to defray that cost? How many guests do we anticipate have it? And what will our expenses be? You take that expenses and you divide it by the number of people you're going to try and get there, and that's how you come up with your price point.
Mhm.
It's a simple equation.
Mhm.
Ruby, from your side, in the past, usually you have you have bought the food from some places and then bring them to tables. So
No, not for our Passover, Marcelo. That has never happened. Not for our Passover.
Mhm.
I don't know if the Havarad does a separate Passover and that's how they do it. But for our Passover, that has never happened. We make all the food here.
I think he was commenting how we've done it in the past, and
In the
I-
Havarad.
that's right.
Oh, okay, yeah.
So because we try to keep the cost down, and that what we used to do was we had an outside restaurant provide the main food, and then in addition to paying, people would bring like the wine or the dessert or extra things that we might be missing, and that was the way we did it to keep the cost down.
okay.
And what restaurant were you using?
Haifa,
Haifa, where is that?
Pico Robertson.
Okay. And how much do they charge per plate, per person?
Do you recall, Rachel? It was so long ago since we've done it that way, unfortunately.
Maybe around 40.
No, oh, no, no, it wasn't that, because we only charged the people 25 for the whole dinner, and then they brought something extra. So no, for
So the person wasn't just paying 25, they were paying for the wine and something else.
right, they paid 25 for the main part, and then everybody brought something, matzah, wine, dessert, everybody brought something extra, salad, different things to complement the main course. So
And
that's
how
how
you made sure that everything was kept kosher for Passover?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, basically, we did it as best as we could. I think the restaurant was supposed to be kosher, and then
But
everybody
the
just
people who were
brought the side
bringing
dishes.
things, how do you maintain that everything that they made were made in kosher for Passover containers?
It's like vegetarian.
The
It was
containers
just
they used were Passover brand new.
Everybody brought, like Rachel was saying, side dishes. It wasn't anything. It wasn't like the main dish, and the main dish was provided by this Israeli restaurant. Do you follow what I mean? I'm not sure what else you mean about kosher, because I'm not as religious as maybe some other people are.
It was like salads, just side dish, nothing that would be kosher or non-kosher.
Well, the dish you're preparing it.
Mhm. Well, they did it with the plastic dishes or
Right. We served it on those plastic dishes that you can buy. We didn't have our own dishware. It was all freshly bought. Let's put it that way.
Okay.
Jeffrey, any suggestion from your side?
Well, Carmen worked so hard last year for the,
Last year was my private personal.
I know.
Passover. So don't mention last year.
But I'm just saying how many people were there, and then how many people we never saw again. That's why I think we should just concentrate on us
Mhm.
and not have a big event, because the big event is just a lot of work especially for Carmen and everybody else. And then if people would come, the following week to a Shabbat service, I would think it's, you know what I'm saying?
But yeah, I
So
hear what you're
I-
saying, Jeff, but there's another side to that is we just finished having a discussion about how do we keep the community going?
Yeah,
Yeah.
reaching out.
Yeah, that's going back to our discussion before. What
Right.
do we do? We have to
You know
do
what, I
something
need
that
to
people
stop. I
want.
need to
people-
stop. Hold on a minute. I need to stop the live stream.